The kiss didn't happen during a dramatic storm or under twinkling lights. It happened on an ordinary Thursday evening, the kind of quiet gray day where the air feels heavy with things left unsaid. Emma and Jack had spent the afternoon painting. The bookstore's front windows with fall leaves and little hand-lettered signs for the local festival. The radio played soft country songs in the background, and they laughed more than they spoke, brushing fingers accidentally while reaching for the same paintbrush, stealing glances that lingered longer than they should have. There was a stillness in the air that felt like waiting, like something was on the edge of happening. As the sun began to dip behind the hills, casting a golden glow over the shop front, Jack stood beside her, tape in hand, and simply looked at her. Really looked, not like a friend, not like someone who let her go once, but like someone who was about to make a choice. "I think I've been waiting a long time to do this," he said softly, almost like he was saying it more to himself than to her. Emma's breath caught, her heart thudding hard in her chest. "Do what?" she asked, though she already knew. Jack didn't answer with words. He leaned in, slow and steady, giving her time to stop him. She didn't. Their lips met gently at first, then deeper, fuller, and suddenly the air around them felt warmer, heavier, real. He kissed her like he meant it, like he wasn't just kissing her now, but kissing every version of her he had loved over the years. The 8-year-old dreamer, the woman who left, and the one standing in front of him now, unsure and full of longing. Emma's hands clutched the front of his jacket as if letting go would mean falling. And in some way it did. When they pulled apart, they didn't speak at first. Words didn't seem big enough for what had just passed between them. She looked up at him, her cheeks flushed, lips parted, still trembling slightly. "I wasn't supposed to still feel this," she whispered, barely able to look him in the eye. Jack touched her cheek with the back of his fingers, the same way he used to when they were teenagers. "But you do," he said, his voice low, steady. She nodded, a little tear slipping free. "Yeah, I do." There it was, the truth, laid bare and terrifying. That kiss had unraveled something tightly wounded inside her, something she thought she'd buried a long time ago. And now everything felt different, like the world had shifted slightly on its axis, like maybe this time they were finally in the right place at the right time. But emotions are rarely that simple. As the evening darkened and Jack walked her to her car, Emma's mind was racing. Her heart wanted to believe in second chances, in unfinished love stories that still had chapters left to write. But fear tugged at her too. Fear of being hurt, of wanting something too much, of opening her heart again just to watch it break. As Jack opened her car door, he paused, eyes searching hers. "This doesn't have to be complicated," he said. "We could just see where it goes." Emma gave a shaky smile, her voice soft. "Nothing about you and me has ever been simple." "Jack," he nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Maybe that's what makes it worth it." She drove home with trembling hands, her lips still tingling from his kiss, her mind spinning. Something had changed, not just between them, but inside her. And deep down she knew there was no going back now. Asterisk Emma didn't come into the bookstore the next day. Jack waited until noon before he stopped pretending he wasn't worried. He walked the few blocks to her house, but her car wasn't there. Something in his chest felt tight, not panic, but that slow ache of knowing. Someone was pulling away. He found her by the lake, standing at the water's edge in a thick sweater and jeans, hair blowing in the crisp breeze, her arms wrapped around herself like she was holding something in. The lake was calm but cold-looking, reflecting the quiet gray sky above them. Jack didn't say anything at first. He just stood next to her, letting the silence speak. After a long pause, Emma finally said, "I got scared." Her voice was low, the kind of tone that comes from deep inside, honest and unguarded. Jack nodded, staring out at the water with her. Yeah, me too. She turned to face him, eyes shining, not with tears, but with truth. I left once already. I know how easy it is for me to run when things start to matter. Jack looked at her then, really looked, the way he had so many times before, but this time with nothing held back. Then don't run this time, he said gently. Stay. Emma's heart pounded so loud she could barely hear anything else. But what if it doesn't work? What if I mess it all up again? Her voice cracked at the edges. Jack reached for her hand, slowly, like asking a question without words. Then we figure it out, together. His hand was warm, steady. It grounded her. And in that moment, something inside her softened. She had spent years building walls, convincing herself that safety meant staying alone, that it was better to miss someone quietly than to risk losing them again. But here he was, the one person who had never asked her to be anything but herself, standing beside her, offering something rare and terrifying, a second chance. Emma looked up at him, searching his face for doubt and finding none. I don't know how to do this slowly, she whispered. Jack gave a soft smile. Then don't. He stepped closer until there was no space left between them and kissed her again, not with the urgency of the first kiss, but with something even deeper, a promise. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his, her voice barely a breath. Okay, she said. Let's see where this goes. And just like that, the fear didn't vanish, but it stopped being louder than the hope. That night, they sat by the fireplace in her living room, sharing stories they never finished telling, laughing about high school days, and falling into a rhythm that felt like home. There were still questions, still things to figure out. But love, the real kind, the slow burning, still dash there, dash after dash, all dash these dash years kind, doesn't need everything to be perfect. It just needs two people willing to try. As the fire crackled beside them and Jack gently kissed the top of her head, Emma closed her eyes and let herself believe that maybe this was how love was always meant to feel. Not loud or flashy, but steady, honest, real. One kiss had changed everything, but it was the choice to stay, to keep choosing each other, that would make it last. Emma Parker never planned to come back to Vermont. 10 years ago, she left this sleepy lakeside town behind, chasing a big city life in Seattle, fast-paced days, late-night takeout, and a relationship that felt almost right. Until it wasn't. When everything fell apart, the job, the love, the version of herself she built, she came back, carrying a suitcase and a quiet kind of sadness that never left her eyes. Now she helped her sister run their family's old bookstore, tucked between a coffee shop and the post office, and lived in a cozy little house near Lake Willoughby where the nights were too quiet and the memories a little too loud. But the real storm began when she saw Jack Monroe again. He was older, broader in the shoulders, and wore the kind of quiet strength that made people pause. Once, he had been everything to her. Best friend, late-night secret keeper. The boy she should have kissed under the bleachers, but never did. They were always close, maybe too close, but life got in the way. Emma left, and Jack stayed behind, becoming a firefighter, helping his dad fix roofs on weekends, and building a life that never quite included her. Now, 10 years later, they passed each other like strangers who knew too much, a nod at the grocery store, a polite hey at the gas station. But beneath that small-town politeness was something raw and unresolved. It all changed one cold October evening. The first snow came early, soft and silent, frosting the world in white while Emma stayed late at the bookstore, trying to ignore the growing loneliness that always came with fall. Her car wouldn't start, of course, But before she could even think about calling someone, Jack pulled up in his truck like some kind of memory with headlights. No phone call, no text. He just knew. "You always hated the early snow?" he said, brushing flakes off her windshield with a gloved hand, his voice low and familiar. Emma stood there, her breath visible in the air, wrapped in her old wool coat and every feeling she thought she'd buried. "I still do," she murmured, her voice catching on the edges of something unsaid. Their eyes met, and in that quiet space between words, everything old and unspoken rose back up. The laughter, the late-night drives, the things they never said before she left. Jack didn't push. He didn't need to. He just looked at her like he used to, like she mattered. And for the first time in years, Emma felt something stir in her chest. Longing, regret, hope. She wanted to say more, to reach out, to ask if he ever missed her, but all she could do was watch as he silently started her car, then stood there, snow settling on his jacket, waiting to make sure she got home safe. That night, she lay awake in bed, heart beating too loud in the silence, wondering why he showed up, how he knew, and if he ever stopped loving her. What she didn't know yet was that Jack had never really stopped. And deep down, neither had she. Something had shifted, something old had opened. And without either of them realizing it, a door between their past and their future had quietly creaked back open. Asterisk, after that snowy evening, something started to shift between Emma and Jack, quietly at first, like the way leaves start to fall before anyone notices the season is changing. They didn't talk about what happened in the parking lot, about the way he looked at her like he saw the girl he used to know, still hiding under all her grown-up hurt. But they started crossing paths more often, too often to be by chance. Jack would drop by the bookstore with a coffee in hand, saying he was just in the area, and Emma would pretend she didn't see the way his eyes lingered on her a little longer than necessary. They'd sit outside the shop under the fading October sun, sipping coffee and talking about safe things, books, neighbors, the strange comfort of small-town life, avoiding the past like it was something fragile they might break if they looked too close. And yet, in those silences between words, something real was happening. One afternoon, he helped her fix a flickering light in the back room, and for a few minutes it felt just like it used to, easy, natural, like their hearts still spoke the same language even after all these years. That day, Emma found an old photo tucked between the pages of a forgotten novel, her and Jack, high school seniors, arms around each other, sunburned and smiling at the lake. She'd forgotten how young they looked, how close they stood. Jack walked in just as she was staring at it, her fingers trembling around the edges. He glanced at the photo, then at her. "We were good together," he said quietly, the weight of his voice pulling her back to that summer, that closeness, that almost kiss they never talked about. Emma's heart beat faster. "Were we?" she asked, half afraid of the answer. Jack stepped closer, his presence steady, warm. "Yeah," he said, before everything got complicated. His words were simple, but they struck her deep. Life had gotten messy: college, careers, long-distance calls that turned into silence. She had loved him once, maybe without even knowing how much. And now, standing there in the soft golden light of the back room, with dust dancing in the air and the photo between them, it all came rushing back. He brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, a small, familiar gesture that felt far too intimate for two people pretending they were only friends. Her breath caught in her throat. "You left," he said gently, "but I never stopped thinking about you." Emma felt her eyes sting. She didn't know whether to run or fall into his arms. "I remember too much," she said, barely above a whisper. "That's the problem." Jack didn't move. He didn't try to fix it or make her promises. He just stood there, solid and quiet, his hand resting against hers, Not pulling, not pushing, just there. And in that moment, it wasn't just about what they lost, it was about what still remained. Something unspoken, but alive. A love that never quite died, no matter how far they drifted. Emma lay awake that night again, heart full of confusion and ache. She could still feel the warmth of his touch on her hand, still hear the way he said, "We were good together." But what haunted her most wasn't the past, it was the sudden, terrifying possibility that something beautiful was still waiting for them, if she was brave enough to reach for it. And maybe, just maybe, Jack was still reaching too.